So much news today. There's been a bit of a tiny rift brewing between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. This iconic photo is great. Now, Elon had a bad day in Path of Exile, where I believe he died to a tutorial boss on stream, while still claiming to be one of the top 10 players in the world. But that's not what I'm bringing up. What I'm bringing up is the fact that in a time where everybody else seems to be getting in line behind Donald Trump about his tariff the entire world strategy, Elon Musk, who owns a business and at least recognizes that it will dramatically increase the cost of everything they produce, is kind of trying to pull him back, kind of realizing that it's just, it's kind of disastrous, okay? And is openly getting on social media and on news articles and saying he hopes for a zero tariff situation, at least between the US and the EU as allies, having free trade between Europe and the United States. Now, he's not contradicting Trump directly, because that's the leader, that's the man, but he has been pointing his criticism at this guy, Peter Navarro, Trump's top trade advisor. Now, this guy's the most pro-tariff man in the world. This guy is probably the architect of most of Trump's tariff plans. He's been pushing for it for a very long time, before even this administration. Now, what's interesting about Peter Navarro is he's written a lot of books where he cites a eminent economic author for some of his opinions on tariffs. And this guy's name is Ron Vara. Peter Navarro is always saying that he gets some of his great ideas in his, like, over half dozen books, has said Ron Vara is the source of some of his studies and the things he cites. Well, it turns out that Ron Vara...
In all of his books, Peter Navarro has cited an economics expert to justify his views. And the economics expert he cites is somebody named Ron Vera. At one point, Ron Vera wrote in the memo that Trump could, quote, ride the tariffs to victory. Problem is, Ron Vera doesn't exist. He never has. The economics expert that Peter Navarro has long cited to explain why he's so gung-ho on tariffs, this person, Ron Vera, is a made-up person.
Ron Vera is a anagram of Navarro. He Voldemorted it, dude. He Tom Riddled that shit. And he left a chamber of secrets in all of his books. But what's funny is if you look back at some of these quotes, not only does he glaze Ron Vara, which turns out to just be him, but he also like uses it to add some distance to some of the more inflammatory things he would say. Like he would say that China is building us cribs to use as poison weapons on our babies and shit. But he would say that comes from a study by Ron Vara. And then it's like, I'm not the one being crazy. I just saw this study. I mean, this has been known for a while, this Ron Vara thing. I don't think he's done it relatively recently, but this is the guy who's architecting the current tariff plan, who believes tariffs are the solution to all our problems. And he is in a major beef with Elon Musk. Now, I don't have the tweet. Oh, here, I do actually. Elon Musk said he ain't built shit about Navarro. Navarro ain't built shit. Anyway, there's a beef. What I'm saying is these two have beef that is heating up over the course of these tariff plans. And there seems to be a split again in the right-wing party between, this happened over H-1Bs, and this time it's over tariffs, between like the tech bro right and like the Washington right over whether to defer to Trump on these tariffs. But clearly there'll be more story here, but this is the beginning of a rift today that we saw. Usually everyone's in sort of lockstep, but Elon has broken from the lockstep to call these out. One more thing that was a big piece of news today that I want to talk about was about the military. Now, if you're an American patriot, put your hand up and salute. Hoorah! Or salute our streamers. Equally important to the country. Salute our troops or our streamers. Both of them put their lives on the line every day. Now, I mentioned in my predictions this year, when I was talking about Doge and the general idea of like getting our deficit in order, that there are 4 horsemen of the US deficit. They are Social Security, Medicare, interest payments on our previous debt, and the military. If you are not willing to cut one of these 4, then you are not going to cut anything substantial. If you can't cut one of these 4, you're not actually going to get our budget in line. There's no other way to do it. It's worth mentioning that these 2 are politically impossible to cut. There's like benefits for old people, and old people vote in record numbers, and they will never allow these to be cut. You just can't cut them. This one, you can't really cut without, I don't know, defaulting on US debt and entering a massive run on the treasury, okay? If you don't pay your interest payments, then no one will loan you money anymore, and it's a disaster. So you really only have one left of the 4 horsemen, and that's the military. If you're not gonna find a way to take a serious look at the military budget, well, then you have no real credence to your claim of you're gonna cut spending. And what was wild was, I mentioned this earlier in the year, one of the things that Trump has said that I've been most positively surprised about, this was like post-election pre-inauguration. In that era, I was most positively surprised about was that he was at least flirting with the idea of cutting military spending. In a Super Bowl interview, Trump told Fox News that after Doge finished with the education department, the Defense Department will be next, and they would cut down on the $850 billion budget. This is an important number. At the time of Biden's last year, we had an $850 billion a year military budget. And he was saying, that's extreme. We got to cut that down. We got to find a way to cut that down. He said Elon Musk would be a great master at this rare talent that could transform defense. We can get more efficiency. We can stop overpaying for nuts and bolts and projects to nowhere, and we can get an efficient fighting force. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth came out with his American flag zipper coat and said, hey, I'm all for it. Looking forward to working with you on this one, Elon Musk. We need to cut the fat and grow the muscle, trim the spending, and get more war fighters, more efficient actual fighting force. Today, there was an update to this.
We have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion.
I'm no math expert, again, I'm a business guy, but if you recall, last year, it was $850 billion. Then we've decided to put our task to cutting it. And now this year, the budget is $1 trillion. So I'm just trying to.
So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military.
They went from, fiscal responsibility, we have to get this in order, to now we're bragging about the biggest one ever. The biggest one ever. It's rough for me to see this coming to any fruition. As I've said before, I maintain my pessimism that anybody who claims to be fiscally sound in this government at all seems to follow through on it. Now, what's interesting is part of the reason that we were supposed to be able to spend less on our military, part of Trump's plan that I did think had some soundness to it, was that we will cut spending and spend less because we are going to get Europe to spend more. I disagree with that strategically because I think it gave us some soft power in Europe that helped our trade deals. But his idea was we cut ties, they spend more, we spend less. Okay, this is the plan. Trump wants NATO to spend more. They want Europeans to spend 5% of their GDP on militaries. Okay, we'll cut that. We're spending more anyway, but they're also going to spend more. So just more military worldwide. Here's the thing. In some ways, it worked. Because America has cut ourselves off from our European allies, they now feel like they have to spend defense spending. And so they are going to do this. Europe has now rolled out plans to spend a huge surge of money on defense spending. The only problem is they are wanting to buy their own defense gear. They want to make it in Europe and they want to use it in Europe. So they want to have their own defense companies. Now, America, which has demanded they spend more, is now saying, wait, not like that. US warns EU, you can't exclude American companies from your defense initiative. You have to buy from us. So we're entering a really, again, weird spot where I think some of these ideas are in a way backfiring. We're just entering, we're not cutting our spending on the military. Europe's spending more, but we're not benefiting. And now we lose the advantage that we got from our military in the first place. And then the last thing I'll say is I read this at the White House today. This is another piece of news that came out today. And I want to be clear here that all of these stories I'm pointing out that I think they're just kind of loony. The theme I've been having with the news lately is I think it's a lack of coherence and competence. At some point, I want to argue these ideas on their merits. I want to try to say why I disagree with them fundamentally. But lately I've just been like, hey, they're not working no matter what you do because they're so haphazard. They're so silly. They're so Looney Tunes. They're not, there's no strategy to it. There's a last one though I do want to talk about, which is this. This kind of caught me off guard in that the official White House website was talking about how the reserve function of the dollar is a bad thing. Basically how it f***ed up our trade deficits, how it's f***ed up our currency distortions, and that the dollar being the global reserve currency is actually hurting us. Now, what I will say is some smart people have said something similar. It's hotly debated. Ideologically, there's an argument to be made that it has made it so easy for us to borrow that it's made us dependent on the credit card. You can make that argument. I would just say if the US government in the middle of a massive increase in deficit is saying that the dollar being the reserve currency is a bad thing, doesn't really understand that the only reason they can afford the $1 trillion military and the no spending cuts and the is because of it being the reserve currency. You can't have both. If you really want to not be the reserve currency, you have to get your spending in line. The real problem with this is not that maybe there's like not an argument to be made here. The problem is you can't do both. If you're going to massively increase spending and try to get rid of us being the reserve currency, you're going to fuck this generation and like all future generations of American people. You're setting us up for like this deep, terrible, like Greek-like debt trap. That's what I want to get across. Not that there's not some merit here, but that the two things being done don't work together. There's no jive there. The only reason America's been able to run these deficits for so long is because everybody needs dollars. Everybody needs dollars. So they're willing to, they have to tolerate us printing money like crazy and using it to buy their stuff. We get real goods, they get printed money. That only works because we're the reserve currency. If we're not, it's so I sort of end with that.